Hey Video Bob review fans, it's Video Bob and I have been dying to do the review on this next thing. So, knives, kitchen knives. Alright, this is all about kitchen knives. Now, there's a lot of kitchen knives out there. You know, you can just run down to your local store, pick up a knife set. You've probably seen Ron Popeil on TV for the last 20 years selling his Showtime knives, which aren't bad. I used to have those exact knives, which is why I bring them up. But we're going to talk a little bit about knives, what makes a really good knife, and why the really good knives are so expensive. Now, there's a couple of, we're going to talk about the very top end, okay? There's basically, I'd say 3 or 4 in that category. You've got like Henkel's, you've got the Japanese Shun knives, which are probably considered the best knives. But probably one of the most common, and maybe you're familiar with this brand, is called Wusthof. They're spelled W-U-S-T-H-O-F. They are made in Germany. They've been made there for over 100 and something years, since the 1800s. And they make basically both kinds of knives. There's 2 kinds of knives. You have your stamped knives, which means they come out of a roll of steel and a die stamps it out, which means all the way from the tip to the end of the handle, it's the same pretty much thickness. And then they just attach handles to it, okay? Then you have what's called a forged knife. And forged knives are either poured or they're stamped. You know, they're stamped with a die, and they are varying thicknesses. And these are forged knives. Now, Wusthof does make the cheaper stamped knives, which is their Silver Point series. But we're not going to talk about those. Those are for the lay person, okay? Keep those at home in your mama's trailer. All right, we're talking about the high-end knives. Now, I was attracted to these because, well, I wanted them because they're black and red. You can see there's a bunch of different colors here. And when I was searching for knives, I first was originally interested in some Cutco brand. Now, Cutco, we're not going to really talk about Cutco much here, but Cutco is one of those brands where they're only sold through dealers like Mary Kay or Tupperware or something like that, right? So you won't find those in stores. And there's some good points and bad points to them, but for most of my research, I found the Cutcos were not the best solution. I mean, I know there's people out there that bought them and they swear by them, and they bought them at the county fair and they say they're great. They just wasn't going to do it for me, you know what I mean? So Wusthof, I mean, this is a real brand. And they're made in Germany. Germany's known for its precision. Anyway, generally, when you go out and find Wusthof knives, they're going to have this black handle. Now, this particular series is called the Grand Prix series. The ones that you're going to find at the store, like Williams-Sonoma and Dillard's, those are generally going to be what's called the Classic series, where they have basically a square kind of plastic handle with 3 rivets in them and a little red sticker on there with their Trident logo. Then you might see the Culinar series, which is a high-end series, which is an all-metal handle. You don't want that because it's slippery. A friend of mine who's a professional chef, Chef Joey, he has some of the Culinars. He told me he wraps rubber bands around them to keep them from slipping. What kind of crap is that? You don't want to do that. So the Grand Prix series is a molded plastic handle, but it's an antimicrobial type of plastic, and it's nice and ergonomic. They now have what's called a Pro series, which is sort of the superseder to this, and it's just a slightly bigger handle. This, what I'm holding, is a bread knife. You'll know that it's a bread knife because of the serrated edges here. It's made for cutting a loaf of bread or a sandwich, and it has a black handle. So this video really is a tease. It's really unfair what I'm going to do to you right now, because you can't even buy the knives I'm going to show you, really, for most of these in the United States. Maybe a few of them you can. But I actually imported this entire set of knives in from Japan. Why Japan? Well, because I wanted these red ones. Now, at first I thought the red knives were just an aesthetic, you know, like, hey, I want some red knives. They're going to look cool in my black block, which, by the way, is also custom ordered. You can't get this black 17 slot block from Williams-Sonoma. It's like $50. But generally, Wusthof blocks are natural wood. They don't come in this black. And I wanted to put together this black and red combination. So I bought the block, and then I went out and picked out all the particular knives that I wanted to fill the spaces in the block. And it became kind of an obsession. I was like, man, I got an empty slot. I got to get a knife for that slot. Because that's the kind of nut I am. All right, now, let's go back to Japan here. Now, the Japanese are very particular about their knives and their food. Now, the shun Japanese knives, like a real sushi knife will be what's called a single edge, where it'll have the edge on one side and flat on the other, because they like to cut things so finely. They want that extra millimeter. You know how you go and you get the bowl of soup, and there's a mushroom in there as thick as a sheet of paper. You wonder how they do that? That's a Japanese Cutco knife that's single edge, probably. So German and American versions are double edged. You know, there's a knife side on both sides. Now, in Japan, they have very strict laws about handling the food. Now, there's this thing called the HACCP, Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. Now, this is basically a food safety system where they don't want to cross-contaminate, right? So here in America and a lot of other countries, what they'll do is they will sell different colored plastic cutting boards. So you'd have a red cutting board for your meats, a yellow cutting board for your poultry, a green cutting board for your vegetables, a blue cutting board for your fish. And the reason for this is because in a professional restaurant setting, for instance, my wife is allergic to shellfish. She can't eat shrimp or lobster or scallops, but she can eat salmon, for instance, or red meat or lamb or chicken. So when we go to a restaurant and we're going to order something, steaks, she'll say, I'm allergic to shellfish. And they say, okay, we'll make sure that your food is prepared on an area of the grill that hasn't been near the fish and with utensils that hasn't been near the fish, and that way you won't get sick. Well, the Japanese wanted to take it a step further. Rather than just using a colored cutting board, they went with colored knives and utensils, which explains why there's red. But there's also blue, green, yellow, and black. Black is for your general stuff like bread or utility purposes. So this yellow chef's knife here, this one would be used for poultry. Okay? Now we're going to talk a little bit about this. Since this is one of the biggest knives I have, look at the thickness of this knife. It starts thinner here, gets thicker all the way down, and what you'll notice is, if I hold this knife like this, it's perfectly balanced. You see that? It's a perfectly balanced knife, exactly to the gram. Okay? And you can see the handle here. You can see their logo, which is the trident, the devil's trident, of course. And this is a antimicrobial plastic. So, completely different kind of knife than a stamped knife. Also, I'll point out this hilt here is to keep your finger from going forward. And they don't start the edge right away. They give you about a little bit of space before they start the edge, just in case you slip a little. Because let me tell you something. This thing is razor sharp. By the way, this knife, we'll get to cost here in a minute, but let's just say every one of these knives is between maybe $100 to $200 or more. So this entire knife set with the block and everything, I have about $1,500 invested in this knife set. This is a professional Japanese quality chef knife set. Okay, this green one here, this is for vegetables, as you can see from the green color. This is a Cutco knife. This has these hollow flutes, as they're called. It's called a hollow knife also. And the purpose of these little divots here is to create an air pocket. So let's say you're slicing squash or zucchini or an onion. It creates an air pocket and pushes the food off so it doesn't stick to the blade. And this is a double-edged Wusthof Cutco Japanese style, perfectly balanced. Look at that knife. Perfectly balanced. This is a forged knife. Notice that it's all one piece, forged out of one piece. And this is a super high quality of stainless steel. I forget how you pronounce it. It's like molybdenum, vanadium, chromium, blah, 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 blah. It's made out of some super badass shit. That's what it is. Okay. Here's my blue fish fillet knife. You'll recognize this as a fillet knife. This thing here is so gosh darn razor sharp. Blue, of course, to indicate for fish. You can just, you know, you want to take the skin off of a fish, this will do it. Now, this knife is not as balanced because there's just no way to do that. The handle would be so lightweight, but because it's such a thin blade. This is a meat carving knife, red-handled for meats. This would be used for on a roast, you know, like a ribeye roast, something like that, prime rib. So this is a carving knife, again forged. Look at the balance on that knife. So a real chef will know what this is about. Okay, going back into my meat knives. This is a boning knife. This is made for separating meat from bone and breaking bones up. Maybe you're cutting up ribs, cutting apart, you know, whatever it is you're cutting apart. You're getting separating the meat from the bone. This is a very thick-handled knife. It's meant to be strong for prying, right? Now down into my smaller knives, this is just a small paring knife, which, you know, it's funny because this is a red-handled knife and paring is usually done with vegetables and fruits. So I don't really have an explanation for why this is that way, but it's a red-handled paring knife and quite frankly it looks awesome. Now I wanted to show you this as an example. This is just a utility knife. Now it looks like a Grand Prix, but it is actually not. It's called a silver point. And the way you can tell is it just has a simple stamped blade. It's the same thickness from the tip to the end and doesn't have the metal hilt, and it's just a plastic handle. These silver points are really cheap. I mean, you can get a silver point for like, this thing was like 15 bucks, right? Still a good knife, but this is what you would use to like open a package of vegetables or cut something. You know, it's just instead of grabbing one of your $200 Japanese knives to cut the strap off a back box of broccoli, you use this little thing. All right. Now these down below are just my steak knives, but even the steak knives are fantastic. Grand Prix series, completely forged. Check out notice the little hilt. They give you a little grace period there of about a ½ inch so you don't accidentally cut yourself. Notice this is not serrated. I don't really like serrated knives. Serrated knives tear up your meat. These things are so sharp and so strong. When you're cutting through a steak, it cuts a clean, even cut, like something out of a magazine. It's not all torn apart and ripped apart. You don't need... I think this is the thing. Anybody who would own knives like this knows how to cook a steak and knows how to cook a piece of chicken. Okay? If you own knives like these, you don't need a serrated edge to cut your steak. Because when I cook a steak, it cuts right through there like butter. I know what the fuck I'm doing. Okay. Let's get back to the knives. Alright, I already showed you the bread knife. I'll show it to you one more time. This is serrated. This is for cutting bread. By the way, here's a tip if you didn't know this. Cut your bread upside down. So if you're cutting like a French baguette, a loaf of bread, French bread, turn it upside down. Cut the crust hard part first. Okay. One more knife. This is a hollow meat carving knife. And much like a Cutco style, you know, you have a rounded crescent edge here. Notice, again, the forging, the hilt. This is just a nice hollow knife. This is for, this would be great for like doing fajita skirt steaks, you know, cutting those up, making strips, you know. You don't want the little strips sticking to the blade. That would be perfect for this. And then the other thing that's in this block here is our sharpening rod. And you know, that takes some skill to learn how to do. But you know, you keep your knife sharp using this thing. You want to be careful not to accidentally cut your hand off. And that's what that's for. And you would, let me grab a thing here. So let's talk about knife maintenance real quick. Do not ever put your knives into the dishwasher. Let me repeat. Explain this to your wives. Do not put the knives in the dishwasher. Okay. Now if you do, without heat, that might be okay. But just don't do it. When you're done with your knife, hand wash the knife. Let me show you some examples of what happens to a knife when you put it in the dishwasher. These are some of the Ron Popeil Showtime knives, which is a great example. Again, this is a stamped knife. Same thickness from the tip all the way to the end of the handle. This is just plastic riveted on. Now, this knife was put into the dishwasher. Notice how it overheated, it split. These were supposed to be black. They've turned gray. There's rust in the rivets. You can see that it's a fake rivet. You know what I mean? They didn't actually rivet it. They just put a cap in there. It's fake bullshit. And this is crap, right? Stainless china, whatever. So here's what, like this side's still kind of black, but it shrunk away from the tang. This side's all gray. So what happens is the soaps, the chemicals, and the heat completely destroy the plastic of the knife. And will, you know, missing pieces, it's rusty. I only saved these from the garbage so that I could point them out to you. I mean, look, there's rust stains. Look at the rust. See the rust stain in the knife? For fuck's sakes. It's crap. So here's some other examples really quickly. These are the Silver Point series of Wusthof. Now, you can get like all three of these for like 15 bucks. These are cheap, okay? But this is just a little stamped, cheap little paring knives for, you know, cutting up limes or doing some little fruit decorations, you know, making those little fruit carvings and things like that. That's what that's for. So we were talking about the price. Like I said, I spent about $1,500 on this whole set. Now, I don't want to scare you away from Wusthof. If you really want to have Wusthof just like these, pretty much, you can get the black, regular classic icon handled versions of this set for about $300. The bottom line is, I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. I completely overbought this. I did not need to have Japanese chef restaurant quality versions of the knives. Because ultimately, the knives themselves are pretty much the same. It's just like the handles are a little different. Maybe there's a little bit of a different in the blend of the metal or something, I don't know. But I can tell you, you can go down to Williams-Sonoma at the mall and buy, for 300 bucks, or Dillard's, you know, 300 bucks, you can get a set of Wusthof knives, okay? But I highly recommend Wusthof. These seem to be the best knives with the best ratings that I've found anywhere. There's Hinkles, there's Schuns, there's people who have different opinions. Maybe there's a few other brands I didn't even mention. But the bottom line is, when you go meet somebody who's been to culinary school, somebody who's a professional chef, like my buddy Chef Joey, and you show them your Wustofs, they're just like, yes, those are the Rolls Royce of knives. That's what you want, right? And I'll show you a quick close-up of the knife block here, just to kind of let you take a look what we're dealing with. Now I wanted to point something out to you. I talked about Cutco earlier. Remember Cutco? Well, I wasn't that thrilled with some of the Cutco knives, but I gotta say I was really impressed with their shears, their scissors. Now, the Wusthof scissors were just some regular old kitchen scissors. So the scissors that I have in this collection are actually Cutco. And I'll show them to you up close. They're actually Cutco. And I special ordered these. They're red. They match the red of my other ones. And check out the shaft on this thing. I mean, look at that. That goes all the way through. Very impressive. These are called take-apart scissors. You do this, they come apart. You can clean them and sharpen them very easily. They go right back together in seconds. Let me see if I can grab a... Sorry, I'm walking off a camera here. I'll show you the test that they show people here where I had some extra change. So when you go to Cutco, they show you this impressive thing where they say you can cut a penny with it, right? Watch. You take a penny. I find the camera here. Watch this. Look at that. I just sliced a penny. Those are some badass scissors, dude. You cannot do that with a regular, I mean, here, look, I'll show you. Regular pair of kitchen shears. All right. It's a nice quality pair of kitchen shears. Look at those. Got a screw through there. Pretty good, right? Let's see what happens if we try to. It's not going to happen, dude. You see that happens. Look, it's, yeah. But these Cutcos, so you might say, well, hey, if the Cutcos are so awesome, look at that. Why didn't I just go with the Cutcos? I'll tell you why. Because I don't like the way Cutcos are sold. They're sold through a network of independent little dealers, and they're interested in making commissions. And quite frankly, a lot of those guys, they're just kind of shady. You know, they'll tell you anything you want to hear. You're not sure if you're getting the right price. And then, where do you go when you need help? Well, they say, well, you can mail them back to us and we'll sharpen over here. I'm like, it's going to cost me $20 to mail you back my knives and wait for weeks for you to sharpen them. You know, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather deal with a real company, okay? So if you bought the regular old black-handled Wusthofs, that they're going to have the same lifetime warranty as these, and you can take them right back up to Williams-Sonoma or wherever, or Dillard's or wherever you got them from, and take care of it. With Cutco, you got to track down this goofball that sold them to you at the county fair, right? And I've looked at some reviews about Cutco, and I'd heard about rusting issues and chipping and this kind of thing. You don't hear those stories about these Wusthoffs. So, although I was really impressed with the Cutco scissors, and I bought a pair of these. By the way, these are about $150, and I gotta say, worth it. But very impressed with these. But so it's kind of weird that I've got these weird odd bedfellows of the one Cutco's in there. But pretty happy with the way these things cut. We used them just recently. Doing some vegetables. I had my professional chef friend, Chef Joey, come over. He used my Cutco knife and was very impressed with it. He used it on Fox 4 TV the other day. Was very impressed with it. And, you know, for cutting vegetables, matter of fact, this green one is actually much cheaper and easier to get a hold of. You can find this green one with a cutting board as a combo, and I think you can find it for like $100. And I highly recommend it. It's probably one of the most used things that you're going to use. This hollow Cutco knife with the cutting board if you cut vegetables like we do, because every time we make steaks or any kind of meat, we always pair it with what's called the Holy Trinity: onions, bell peppers, and mushrooms. That's just my staple. Almost just about everything that I cook, whether I'm cooking chicken breast, if I'm cooking, usually it's steak, lamb, doesn't matter what it is, I'm going to be grilling some onions, bell peppers, and mushrooms with it. That's just going to happen. And that knife gets used a lot. So we'll talk about some other kitchen utensils that I recently got in some other videos, but I have been dying to do this video on these knives, but I hadn't been able to do it because I had to order each and every one of these knives individually from different places, and it's taken me a month to put it together. So if you wanted to duplicate this same kind of a set, you're looking at spending about $1,500 to do it with the same colors and everything. That's what I've spent on this entire package, because the average, for instance, these steak knives, the set of four, $169. Your average one of these large knives is about $160 to $250. The block, $50. You know, cheapest thing in here probably was this sharpening rod. You know, that was probably $50. I think this bread knife was $50. But for the most part, the cheapest thing obviously is the utility knife for $15. You know, these paring, I think the paring knife, even though I paid premium price for it, I think Williams-Sonoma had it on sale for like $29. But anyway, if you wanted to duplicate exactly what I'm holding here, that's what you're gonna spend. I gotta be careful because there's a tiny little tip sticking out of the bottom there. Ooh, sharp, sharp, sharp. Look at that. You can see it right there. All right. That's my video on Wusthof Custom. So this is the Wusthof Grand Prix 2 series. Now, before I close, because I know these videos last on the internet sometimes 10 years and have millions of views. I have videos on this channel that go back 10 years. So if you're watching this video and the Grand Prix 2s are no longer available, they have replaced them now with what they call the Pro series. And what they've done is they figured out a cheaper way to make these. Rather than making the entire handle one color, they left a little notch and then they just put a little ring on the end with the color that they need. Very smart. But, and again, explaining the reason of the colors, because I'm not sure I explained it properly. I want to go back and go over this. Rather than having different color cutting boards for making sure there's no cross-contamination, for these Japanese standards, they wanted to have color-coded knives as well. The reason for that is, let's say you got your yellow knife, you're cutting up some chicken, some raw chicken salmonella on it. You don't want another chef grabbing that knife and cutting up your cucumber that's going to go on your salad with raw chicken on it. And you don't want somebody who's using your fish knife that's just cut up a lobster tail then to come over here and cut up your steak and you're allergic to shellfish. Or maybe this vegetable knife that was used to cut up some onions, and then the guy comes over here and he's cutting a lobster tail with it and he puts it back. So that way, all the chefs in the kitchen know, you only use this yellow knife on poultry. You only use the green knife on vegetables. You only use the blue knife on shellfish. And that way, you won't ever cross-contaminate your knives by accidentally getting a little bit of, you know, especially with all the religious protection you have. You have like Muslims, Jewish people, things like that don't eat pork. So maybe you have a designated knife for doing pork, and then you have a vegetarian person who's only eating that. You don't want to cross-contaminate. So that was the purpose of these knives. A lot of other, you know, here in America, we don't give a shit. We use the same black knife. You know, you don't like it, that's your problem. You're just going to have to deal with it, Bubba. But the Japanese, they're very considerate. They care a lot about their food, and they take a lot of pride in what they do. I have much respect for the Japanese, so I really have a lot of respect for Wusthof, this German company, who is also a very respectful type of people working with the Japanese to make this line. But that's why you won't find these, by the way, you won't find these on Wustof's website unless you're looking at their German or Japanese version. So like if you were to go to Wusthof.com, you're not going to find these color of Grand Prix. You'd have to be looking at them through their Japanese or maybe German portal to be able to find them. So you're going to have a hard time finding these if you want to replicate them. But again, you can just get the regular black versions, the American versions, or the UK versions. They're much cheaper, much cheaper, and quite frankly, they're the same knives. Like I said, I'm a fool, and a fool and his money are soon departed. To me, it was worth spending an extra $1,000 just to have these pretty colored knives. Cause you know why? I'm a dipshit. Anyway, thanks for watching my cool reviews, and these are the Wusthof Grand Prix, and I'm Video Bob. I am a dipshit.